What's another passage that clues us in to God's purposes for humans in creation? Well, Genesis 2, verses 15 through 17. Let me read those. The Lord God took the man and put him in the Garden of Eden to till it and keep it. And the Lord God commanded the man, you may freely eat of every tree of the garden, but of the tree of the knowledge of good and evil you shall not eat. For in the day that you eat of it, you shall die. Notice particularly verse 15 there. Man is put in the garden to till it and keep it. Now those same verbs, or similar verbs I should say, will later describe the role of the priests and the Levites in the tabernacle and temple. And those references occur in Numbers chapter 3 and 8. Those verbs are sometimes translated as serve and guard. So the man has a priestly role to protect the garden sanctuary. And when he fails to do this, he is expelled from Eden. And the task of guarding the garden is given to the cherubim. They stand there with the flaming swords to turn everybody aside. So together, these two Genesis passages present Adam as a priest king, God's image, placed in the garden as God's temple. And of course, while we didn't read the verses, Eve is immediately created as Adam's helper, as his partner in verse 18. So together, humans, male and female, will accomplish God's purposes for God's creation. They should take the divine presence, they should take the divine sanctuary, and they should extend it into all creation. They should protect it from harm and extend it into all creation. They're to do the job that the later priests are directly commanded to do. So in summary, thus far, we see humans exist to bear God's image, particularly his moral attributes, and to express these virtues to all creation. Now, sadly, as we know, Adam and Eve do not fulfill this purpose. But that does not mean that God's purposes for creation are lost. So let's see how God restores, so to speak, his purpose for humanity. If we were to go on and look at verses from Genesis 3, we would read there that, once again, rather than fulfilling their commission, Adam and Eve eat the forbidden fruit. They are thus expelled from God's presence in the garden. They can't be in the temple if they're not going to fulfill their purpose. But their expulsion does not mean, as I've already suggested, that humanity loses its vocation. Yes, there will be opposition, as God says. The thorns and the thistles will grow, and you'll have to fight against that. But the language of humanity's commission is repeated to Adam's descendants, particularly Abraham and Israel. And let me just read some snippets of those repetitions. So again, thorns and thistles, the creation is now cursed, it's now fallen. There's the power of sin that we see already in Genesis 4 when Cain kills Abel. So there will be resistance, there will be powers, there will be an opposition to be overcome. And we'll read Genesis 3:15 in a moment. We're not skipping that. But notice that even as we go down then through the history after Adam and Eve, God still speaks to humanity in terms of his original commission to them. So Genesis 9, verses 1 and 7, we read, God blessed Noah and his sons and said to them, be fruitful and multiply and fill the earth. Be fruitful and multiply, abound on the earth, and have dominion over it. So even after sin, even after a worldwide flood, because everything is so violent and disordered, the creation has to go back to its disorder so God can once again bring new creation, bring order out of chaos. Despite all these hostile powers, God still says to humanity, You are to have dominion over the earth. And again, how are we understanding dominion? You are still to fill the earth with my presence. So God's presence will be seen in a portion of his creation and should spread beyond it. Genesis 17, verses 2 and 6. And I will make my covenant between me and you, God speaking to Abraham now, and I will make you exceedingly numerous. I will make you exceedingly fruitful. Hear the same words? It ties everything together with one purpose. Genesis 22, 17 and 18. Your offspring shall possess the gate of their enemies. Notice that? Possess the gate of their enemies. That's language of ruling. That's language of subduing. And by your offspring shall all the nations of the earth gain blessing for themselves, because you have obeyed my voice. And finally, Exodus 19, verses 5 and 6. Here at Mount Sinai, the covenant ceremony for Israel, God says, now therefore, if you obey my voice and keep my covenant, you shall be my treasured possession out of all the peoples. Indeed, the whole earth is mine, but you shall be for me a priestly kingdom and a holy nation. What do priests do? They bring the knowledge of God to people, and they bring the people into the presence of God. God's purposes in creation is to fill the earth with his presence. And when that's thwarted, God pursues a saving purpose to restore his image in humanity and to bring the knowledge of God to his creation. And he'll work through a special people that are related to him by covenant. But the purpose is to restore his image and his presence in his creation. Now, sadly, once again, like Adam's descendants continue to fail to fulfill their commission. Israel sins repeatedly in the land. And what happens? Just like Adam, taken out of the land, taken out of the presence of God, and sent into exile. And so what the world needs is a new Adam. What we need is a new humanity. What we need is somebody that can finally fulfill this vocation. And that is what God promises throughout the Old Testament. Let's look at some of the places where God promises that.